Hello and welcome to Tales from a Graybeard. I'm your Graybeard Dave. Today I'd like to talk about cooperative growth, how we grow our employees in a way that I find to be the best way of growing, an ethical way of growing, one that supports the mental well-being of everyone involved and focuses on the goals of the company. We got to talking about this at work in one of our manager cohorts, and I promised to write up my thoughts, and I thought this might be a fun way to do it. I think it's a little easier to absorb, and what the heck, I can publish it on my YouTube channel, and hopefully other people get some advantage from this as well. So, cooperative growth, a manager's guide to growing your reports. I always go back to, why do we hire software developers? And so I think it's really important to focus on the outcomes that we want from our software developers. One of the principles of the Agile Manifesto is working software is the primary measure of progress. And I really believe that. The focus on the outcome here is we make software that drives revenue, right? That is the primary goal. That is why people hire software developers. We make accessible software that people use. And we keep our current software running. KTLO, keep the lights on. Those are the really important things that software developers do. There are these secondary things that people tend to focus on when we say, what do software developers do for their work? We write code, we write tests, we do PRs, we participate in Agile ceremonies, we review PRs, we do all of these activities that software developers do. But we should recognize very explicitly that all of those are secondary. The primary thing is that we deliver software that makes revenue for the business and is accessible to the customer and can be used by the customer to do whatever they need the software to do. Typically, I work in business, so it's to accomplish some sort of business task. Keeping that in mind, let's switch topics to ratings. Typically, companies have different ratings. When I joined Google, there was CME is consistently meets expectations, EE was exceeds, SEE was strongly exceeds, and superb was great, and then there was NI needs improvement. But typically, and Google's changed the ratings. I forget how the new stuff is. I was only there for a few months after the ratings changed. Typically, you can think of it really as three things, and this is actually how my current company does it. You're either doing well, you're meeting your expectations, you're doing poorly, you're not meeting your expectations, or you're doing exceptionally and you're kind of being set up for promotion. The one here that's sort of an outlier is doing poorly. If the employee is doing poorly, most of the rest of these slides don't apply. Luckily, this doesn't happen very often. Normally, there's one or two people in a team of like 15 people who are doing poorly. So say maybe whatever that is, 6% are 6% or fewer are in there at most. I would say 6%. Even that sounds high to me when I say it out loud. You're not looking to grow that person, just get them back on track. You're looking to document their performance and failing, so it's going to come out of it from a different perspective. The audience isn't just your report, but it's also HR, and this may come to firing, and firing often comes to lawsuits. So you're also preparing it for a judge. And the goals with these reviews is to prepare for not just to get them back on track, but also to prepare for disciplinary action if necessary, PIPs, firing, stuff like that. So they get that out of the way. I'll touch on poorly a little bit in the future, but mostly we're talking about people doing well or doing really well. Okay, so I like at the beginning of a cycle to set expectations, and often the beginning of a cycle is at the end of the last review and can be done as part of the review. So first time someone joins the company, you start off, that's the beginning of your cycle, you set expectations. The next time, then at the end of the cycle, you're doing the review and you're setting expectations for the next cycle. So these are the three things that I like to focus on. What work is coming up? What does your report want to focus on? And what do you want the report to focus on? What work is coming up? These are your company OKRs and your team's KRs. Objectives and key results. So OKRs and KRs are what key results your team is responsible for. So talk about them with your direct report. Review your OKRs and the KRs which apply to your team. Talk about what work they'll be doing on that to drive these. Talk about why they're important to the company and to the customer. This sets the stage that the company is contributing meaningfully to the company's bottom line, to their objectives. If your direct report is not contributing to the company's objectives, then you should be rethinking your strategy. Everybody should be working towards the company's objectives. Remember, we're here to build software that drives the company's objectives, which is typically revenue. If you're not doing that, you're probably doing something wrong. That may be that the work you're doing is incredibly important, but you haven't told the company, so it's not part of our objectives. Regardless what it is, stop and go back and think about why you're having this person work on something that isn't important to your boss's boss's boss. Because that will come back to bite you. But most people are going to be working towards OKRs and KRs, and they can explain why this person is doing it in terms of why it's important to the customers and to the company. And I think that really sets the right mental tone for people. They are valued, they're useful, they're here for a reason. Next, you want to ask what they're focusing on. I talk about concrete skills they want to develop. One way I put it is I say, all right, take our leveling framework, our role profiles, whatever you want to call it. Take the thing that describes what the various software engineers at various roles do, and look at the role one up from you. If you were promoted into that role today, what would be freaking you out? What would you be worried about not being able to do? And so, let's get you time to practice that. But that is very promotion focused. You can talk about what concrete skills you want to develop. Oftentimes people will come back and say, I want to get better at Kafka. I want to learn Kubernetes. I want to learn a new programming language. I want to get better at managing people. I want to get better at managing projects. I want to get better at communication. Really like concrete things that you can give them work to do. I find we often ask, where do you want to be in 5 years? And people make up something because who knows where they want to be in 5 years. And it's super vague. Like, I think I want to be in management. Okay, how do we execute on that? It's very difficult. Instead, I look for stuff that's actionable. And then as a manager, you have the ability to find those opportunities for your direct report. You have the work that needs to get done, but that work can be doled out in whatever way. And you can direct the choosing of which OKRs you work on according to what the needs of your team are. So if one of the members of your team needs to learn about Kafka and you see as part of your KRs that you're supposed to be cleaning up code, perhaps you can microservicize something and make it asynchronous and put stuff into a message queue and boom, there you go, Kafka. As a manager, you've got that flexibility. You can even move people around to other teams, although I tend not to do that because that can be very damaging to a team's cohesiveness and to loneliness at work. But regardless, think about the upcoming work. Are there opportunities? If there aren't opportunities to do what they want to do, talk about that. Say, hey, you really want to learn to use Kafka, but I don't see anything we're working on that'll help you learn Kafka. So, is there something else? And that's okay. You can't do everything, but you can try and you can have the conversation and you can go into it very, you can plan very explicitly. Then think about what you want them to focus on. Now, oftentimes people take that to mean like, what is this person doing poorly? What are they not doing right? But if they're actually doing poorly, then this isn't the right conversation. We go back to that, where I was saying if they're doing poorly, then you're documenting stuff and getting ready for the judge and that sort of stuff. Think of this in terms of promotion. They've got where they want to go on the ladder and, the career ladder. And you've got your role profiles, your leveling framework, your skills list, or whatever you want to call it. And you can say, okay, if you want to get from senior to staff, you need to demonstrate these skills. You can also say at a senior level, there are these things that I need you doing. So, you are a senior software developer. I need you taking this task. We have this important project coming up. I need you to take this project and run it and make sure that things get done. You're going to have a few junior people working with you, mentor them up, work with them, work with your PM, and get this project over the line. Whatever it is, it doesn't mean these are things that they're not at. Because when you talk about things that they're not good at, you're talking about past performance. Now we're talking about picking up new skills, and people aren't good at things they've never done. And we're talking about handling work that's coming up, which isn't good or bad. You're just simply saying this needs to get done, and I want you to do it. You're not reflecting on previous performance. You're talking about the future. Next, soft skills. So I find it very, very important to make sure that people are acting in accordance to the values of the company. Every company has their set of values. Google's included things like thrive in ambiguity. Door-to-Door had work hard, play hard. EasyCater has test it, try it. Most have something about working well with others, about being in a team, so I'll talk about that. If someone's struggling with these, it's okay to talk about it. People think that soft skills aren't skills. Skills you have to learn. People think you should just naturally be good at these soft skills, but some people are, but most people, particularly engineers, don't pick up these soft skills just naturally. You have to work at them, and it's okay to say you need to develop these. It can be insulting when you're talking about that. So instead of saying you don't work well with others, say you'll be working more collaboratively than before, and I want you to focus on delegating, accepting delegation, recognizing the value of others. These are the particular parts of working well with others that you're not doing, that you're not demonstrating, and I need to see you demonstrating them. And these are new problems that are coming up, new skills that you have to develop, and I want to work with you to develop those. That way, again, you're focusing on the future and not focusing on what people did wrong in the past. The past is gone. You can't fix it. All you can do is focus on the future. I want to go over that a little more with another example. I worked with a guy a few jobs back who was struggling to get along with the business side of the business. He was working in IT, and he would struggle to get like some of the setup done because they would come to him at the last minute and they would make changes. And so I talked with him about how to make sure that his input queue was more organized. Build a checklist of, if you're hiring somebody, you want a laptop for them, fill out this form. Get me all this information. I need it by such and such a date. Be really explicit about it. So giving him these skills necessary to have that soft skill of working better with the business. Oftentimes soft skills are actually backed by hard tactical skills. And so we worked together to build some of those hard tactical skills, to set the boundaries between him and the rest of the business, to be explicit about what he needed. And it made the working arrangement so much better. And he ended up really just rocking the job. And I say it as if that was all coming from me. I helped out there, but he did most of the work. Okay, so you're done talking about what's coming up in the future. You've talked about the objectives and key results that they're working on. You've talked about the soft skills that they're going to be building coming up. You've talked about what it is they want to learn. You've talked about what you want them to focus on. Then they go through the cycle and they're working and you're meeting with them and everything's great. And then you come up for the review. So there's some pre-work for the end of the cycle review. At Google, we did 6-month cycle, and then we started doing 3-month cycle, and I don't know, it got kind of crazy. Most companies do yearly reviews. So the most important thing is ask your direct report, to write up everything they've done and send it to you beforehand. And then you review it, and you note anything that they should add, or you should add, anything that's not part of it. I say this again later, I believe. Engineers don't gloss over failures. They gloss over successes. They tend to see only their failures. And they'll say stuff like, oh, well, that wasn't important. Like, hey, didn't you present this to the team? Didn't you have like one of these brown bag sessions and present this to the team? And they'll say, oh, yeah, that was just like an afternoon thing. You say, no, but that was important. People learned from that. You showed leadership in doing that. You showed interest in the business in doing that. That's important. Don't minimize that. Hey, didn't you fix 30 bugs? Didn't you do this project that you're totally forgetting? Make sure that they see everything that they've done. I always say, um, I don't make my employees, make my direct reports see everything they've failed at. I make them see everything they've succeeded at. And I make them sit down and make them recognize the value of what they've done. This is the way that you combat imposter syndrome, by making sure that they know the value that they've brought and they know the successes they've brought. And then you can also ask them, same thing you did at the beginning of the cycle, what concrete skills do you want to develop so that you can go into the review knowing that this is a good time to do that. It also gets them thinking, okay, you asked this last time. I think I actually developed those skills. And it gives them that idea that they're better now than they were 6 months or a year or whatever, however long your cycle is. That they can see their growth. If you ask them again, what skills do they want to develop, they're forced to acknowledge that they've already developed the ones, that their answer is different from last cycle. Oh, here, I say it here. Engineers rarely gloss over failures, but they gloss over successes frequently. So the review, so you sit down with that list. You say, these are the things that you sent me. These are the things I think you missed. Don't gloss over anything. Talk about why those things are important. If they try to minimize their work, don't let them. Again, this is how we combat imposter syndrome. So you're going to sit together and you're going to go over this. And that's your review, is look at all these things you've succeeded at. Now, if they are doing particularly well, you want to focus on what areas of those ladder that they're the next level on, and talk about if they're going to go for promotion, these are the things you need from them. So promotion becomes an additional discussion there, and promotion can be much more tactical and much more tied to the role profile, the leveling framework, the ladder, whatever it is you want to call it. But I want to go over some of these like basic concepts. Growth instead of feedback. As a manager, you only have so much power to change someone's life. When I talked in that ethical, agile, I talked about the baggage that people bring to the job. How, people have had trauma from childhood. People have had trauma from bad jobs. They've got things going on in their lives. Maybe they didn't sleep well. Maybe they didn't eat well that day. You can't change that. But the biggest lever you have in someone's life is what work they're assigned to. You can move people around teams, but moving too many people too quickly introduces loneliness. It's an option you have, but that shouldn't be the first thing you do. You can give them the opportunity to grow by giving them the appropriate work within the framework of the KRs that you are looking to get done. So when you're talking about growth instead of feedback, which of these looks better? My manager tutored me in team leadership. Imagine this is on a resume. Okay, you look at that and say, well, we don't know how successful that was. But if that person instead said, I led a team to deliver on a critical project, well, that's team leadership, and that's demonstrating team leadership. You as a manager, you don't have to tutor anyone. You have to give them the opportunity to learn and to demonstrate their ability. And so that is taking the work you have, taking the OKRs, taking those things that are important to the company, and finding the right thing to give to the right people. And maybe picking and choosing among the OKRs that you're supposed to hit 70% of your OKRs. There's supposed to be too much work. You will have more than enough to choose the right opportunities for the right people. And this is one of the most difficult, but one of the most rewarding things you can do as a manager. And this is where people get the growth. They get the opportunity to grow. And when you're doing this, you're focusing on the future. So growth is forward facing. Growth, you are saying, you did well. You met your expectations, you exceeded your expectations. I think you're ready for new challenges. There's this work we need to pick up, and I'd like you to do this. You haven't done this before, or maybe you have, and I need you to do it more. Whatever it is, you're saying, look, focus on the future. Let's do this. With feedback, you're saying, you did well, however, you could have done better. Let's mentor you up on those things you could have done better. This is how you could have done better. That's backwards facing. So now people see coaching as criticizing because you can't change the past. So if you're saying, this is how you could have done better in the past, that's not growth. That is criticism. Both give directions to improve and grow, but growth is more actionable, frankly, less emotionally damaging. So I've mentioned role profiles, leveling frameworks, career ladders. Google used to call it the the software engineering ladder. They're different names, but they're all the same thing. It's a list of core skills according to each level. So a junior does this, a senior does this. Junior should be able to code to tasks. You give them a task and they do it. Mid-levels, you should be able to give them more work and get it done independently. Seniors should be able to handle large tasks or projects and work between teams, and staff should be able to lead large efforts and programs, contribute to OKR planning. It's those sort of things. They all vary. They all have different details. They all have way more words than this. But these are the general concepts, like juniors, mid, senior, staff, principal, whatever, all these various levels. These are their attributes. Leveling frameworks are secondary. Remember, we go back to that first slide. Why did we hire software engineers? Is building software for the company that delivers revenue, that delivers value for the customer, that's accessible and usable and keeps the lights on. That's why they're doing this. In this previous one, we don't talk about that at all because these leveling frameworks are very oriented towards tactical of how you get these things done. There's nothing wrong with them. I react poorly to them because honestly, Google used them really, really poorly, and they use them to flog people with. And it became my job to flog people with these, and it's given me a lot of emotional damage over that. But there's nothing wrong with these software ladders. They put in concrete terms two big things: why disciplinary action was taken, and what an engineer needs to do to get to the next level. So when we talk about those three ratings, you did well, you met expectations. You did poorly, you didn't, and you did super well, and you exceeded. Well, it's the two on the outside, the super well and the poorly, where these ladders, leveling frameworks, role profiles, whatever, where these come in. If you did poorly, we're going to go to the judge and say, you weren't doing your job because your job says that you must check in X amount of code every week or participate in these ceremonies or whatever it is. You can go and have a concrete thing that you can bring to a judge and say, this is why we fired him. On the other hand, if you want to go to your director or VP or whatever and say this person deserves to be promoted, you've got very concrete things to say this person deserves to be promoted. So that it serves those two sides. But ultimately, that's not what a review is about. Those are the exceptional cases. 90%, 80%, whatever, large percent of your staff is going to be in that place where they're doing well. And you need to be able to grow them even if it isn't through promotion. Promotion isn't growth. Okay, so I have a slide on Goodhart's Law, Tales from the Graybird Beard for Goodhart's Law. You can go and view it, but Goodhart's Law says when a measure becomes a goal, the measure ceases to be valuable. Promotions are a measure of growth. When we treat them as the goal, we set up a competitive environment where people aren't focused on doing good stuff, on making things for the customer and growing the business. They're focusing on their own needs for extra pay and recognition and title and prestige. All of those things are good, but those aren't what people should be focused on. They should be focused on working within the team and putting out products that people use. That is why we're here. No customer will say, man, I love your product because you promoted so many people. They'll say, man, I love your product because you've developed so many things that I use. So growth can be measured in a whole bunch of ways. Do you have more skills? When you came to me and said you want to learn Kafka, 6 months later, you know Kafka. Isn't that great? That's growth. Are you more successful in your personal life? Believe it or not, learning these things, learning Kafka even, but more importantly, learning team leadership, learning organization, and learning how to work within teams and how to delegate and accept delegation. These things make you more successful in your personal life as well. Are you happier? When you succeed at things, it makes you more confident, it makes you more happier, and that confidence makes you more successful. Do your projects run more smoothly? Growth, ultimately, our ability to interact with other people is maturity and growth. Regardless of software engineering or whatever else, as you become better at interacting with other people, your projects run more smoothly. And that's real growth. Do people trust, respect, listen to you more? You know what? That's really important. Trust and respect is one of the foundational things that make us happy as people. And as you grow in your career, people will come to trust and respect you. If you grow through promotion, you may not earn that trust. We all know that VP that got there through ways that we don't respect. That's not growth, that's promotion. And I'm not talking about any of the VPs at EasyCater, just to be clear. I respect every one of the VPs that I work with, but there were a bunch in previous companies that I knew got there by just being the most cold-hearted asshole that they could be, and they went up the ladder. Screw them. No one respects them. But I know engineers that put their heart into learning how to become better at working with other people, and I respect them to the ends of this earth. My architect at Verbo is one of those people. He'll never be a VP. He doesn't want to be a VP, but he has the respect of everybody around him because of this. And yeah, is your career progressing? Are you moving up the ladder? Do you want to go in a different direction? Do you want to go into management, into product? Do you want to move from support into programming? Whatever it is, your career progressing is a measure of growth. But when it is the only measure of growth, when it becomes the goal, then that's where you get that asshole VP. Okay, I think this is my almost last slide. And this one's really important, and I'm going to do a Tales from the Graybeard on Celine's Law. Celine's Law says communication is only possible between equals. When one person is reviewing the other, communication is impossible. Because the second person, the direct report, is going to be telling the manager what the manager wants to hear. The manager is going to say, you didn't do well at this. I need you to improve this. And the direct report's going to say, aye, boss. I want to do that. That's great. And I swallow my bile and I say, yes, boss. Your feedback is valuable to me. I'm going to do what you want me to do because that's what's expected from me. And it's a asymmetric relationship. When two people are working towards the same goal, communication becomes possible. The manager and the engineer are both on the same team trying to get the work that the company needs out. The customer doesn't care if the manager is the biggest badass in the room. The customer cares if they get software that is usable. The manager is there to help everybody produce software. And when the manager and the report go in saying, your growth includes building good software, you're going towards the same goal and communication becomes possible. It makes it, when you go in there saying, your growth, we're both here to work on your growth. My job as a manager is to help you grow. And so this is a common goal. My manager will judge me on how well I help you grow. We are in this together. When you do that, it makes it possible for the two of you to be on the same level and have honest to God communication. When you see the world as a team sport, where everybody's working together towards a common goal, everything becomes easier and you become happier. Less competition, more cooperation. I'm not a sports person, but I'm pretty sure the best coaches in the world will tell you that the team is more important than any individual on there. In fact, I know Ted Lasso would say that, and that's basically all I know about sports. So let's wrap up. We're going to focus on the future. That's really what this is saying. Growth is about the future. Feedback is about the past. No one has ever been motivated by hearing they suck. People are motivated by being excited by the future. If you're talking about how to grow their skills, how to grow them as people, how to make them happier and more successful, they're going to be excited about this. And if you're honestly helping them using the powers that you have as a manager, then you should be excited because you're doing honestly good work. And I'm hoping that this is as important for everybody as it is for me. I'm hoping that this makes sense. I do tend to babble. These are difficult concepts for me to verbalize. I wish I was a speaker like Barack Obama or Ronald Reagan or any of the great speakers of our time and could verbalize this better. Vince Lombardi, sports guy, he could verbalize this better. But I'm doing my best, and maybe that's an area for me to grow. But I'm really hoping that this is valuable. So thank you for watching. It's been another Tales from the Graybeard, and I really appreciate you joining.